All right, all right, all right. Don't know what the hell happened. Think it was an OBS issue. I apologize, guys. No, there was no freezing, no nothing. I didn't even restart the computer, so we could fall into some issues, guys. I apologize. It said OBS disconnected. I went to reconnect it. It didn't, and then it just ended the stream. And then I just kind of, switched around a couple of links and just restarted it. Did an internet test, nothing wrong with the Wi-Fi. It's at full speed. Never have any issues with the Wi-Fi ever. It could have been just a quick, dropout real quick, for a split second, which disconnects OBS. Didn't reconnect immediately. Shit happens. So yeah, it's already 100 people back, so I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. I'm glad you guys subscribed to the channel and, came back when it came back up. Just if this stream goes down again, that will be it for tonight. We're not going to try to go 3 times, but I do appreciate you guys coming back. And if it goes down, I'll make it up for you guys with something else. I'll put up a special video on the channel or something. So we were at the point of the documentary where they were right in the middle of the trip, the stroll down in Dallas here. So we're going to have to get right where we were.
And doesn't that look a great deal more suspicious? So just exactly what did happen during the 10 seconds that Bruder was filming. To begin with, Dulles, Lansdale and Atlee Phillips had tried to get over the problem of volley fire, blowing the president's head clean off by firing in 4 stages. Stage 1 was meant to be a single shot by Charles Nicoletti into the back of Kennedy's head from the Daltex building some 40 yards behind. Had he succeeded, the plotters would have had the single assassin with 1 bullet story they wanted. But in his excitement, the mafia assassin squeezed the trigger too soon. His bullet ricocheted off the hard chrome sill of the limo's back seat and struck the curb beneath the overpass, sending up a sharp piece of concrete which scratched James Taig's face. Watch again. We clearly see how this little girl stops running and her gaze looks directly at where the shot originated and not up at the 6th floor of the depository. It was now that Umbrella Man took over. Standing right at the curbside, it was his job, should the first shot miss, to give a clear visual signal. Target is not injured. The intelligence chiefs knew that if this situation occurred, Kennedy would now be moving rapidly away from the first sniper. They knew the only way to make sure of getting him was to fusillade the car. So a moment later, 2 rifles tried to fire from directly in front at exactly the same time.
Are you guys having buffering issues, or is someone just saying that? Because we just came down from a, going down for a second. So, I mean, I'd appreciate if you didn't do that.
Deceive witnesses into thinking there was only 1 shot.
You said you'd killed President Kennedy.
At the same time I said I had killed the judge, I said I had killed Kennedy. Well, do you believe Lee Harvey Oswald killed President Kennedy? We'll get back to that. Alone, without any aid from a rogue agency of the U.S. government, or at least a portion of that agency. I believe you're very naive if you do.
Harrelson's bullet hit JFK in the throat, and another gunman, hiding in a culvert 50 yards away, up in the embankment of the overpass, made the hole in the windscreen, which was later seen by Dr. Evalier Glanges.
The presidential limousine was there. Had been staying there for some time, just watching the back of the emergency room. Talked to my friend next to me and said, "Look, there's a bullet hole in the windshield," and pointed it out to them. But it was very clear. It was a through and through bullet hole through the windshield of the car, from the front to the back.
As Kennedy emerges from behind the road sign, his distress is clear, while Governor Connolly remains composed. This single frame of the Zapruder film makes nonsense of the single bullet theory, because it's quite clear both men have not been struck at the same time. Kennedy has now passed through 2 layers of fire and has not been hit in the head. To cover this eventuality, the assassins were given a simple instruction: fusillade the car with everything. So that in the next few moments, the 5 remaining riflemen fired, causing the Secret Service agent riding in the front passenger seat, Roy Kellerman, to report a feeling like a jet sonic boom as the hail of bullets whistled into the car. It is now more than 3 seconds after Kennedy is hit in the throat that Frank Sturgis misses his target altogether and blows out 5 inches of Governor Connolly's ribs, compressing his lungs and puffing his cheeks, with a bullet which quite clearly struck at far too steep an angle to come from the other end of the depository.
And this is why the forensic evidence of the official story just makes no sense, and that they had to rewrite their official story because they actually had found a bullet that ricocheted off the sidewalk at one point, and that's why they had to fit the one bullet theory hitting one of the, persons in the vehicle and then going into John F. Kennedy, which made absolutely no sense. But that's why they had to rewrite it after, because they accounted for everything, and then someone noticed that there was a ricocheted bullet that a shooter missed, so they had to make one bullet fit everything that happened.
In almost the same instant, Eladio Del Valle hit the governor in the wrist, Weatherford fired into his thigh, and Nicoletti's second shot hit the chrome frame of the window. A moment later, the best marksman, Malcolm...
Just got word that the first stream has been blocked on copyright grounds, so that's fun.
Wallace shot Kennedy in his upper
good 90 minutes and bunch of prep for nobody will ever see it.
back. The bullet strike witnessed and recorded by all the Secret Service men in the following car. Jackie Kennedy starts looking concerned, and yet even now there are no obvious signs that her husband, held upright by his back brace, has been shot twice. The assassins have so far failed to hit him in the head, and it is now that they play the ace up their sleeve. Here we can finally answer the riddle of where on an empty street you can hide a man with a rifle.
Alright, so this is the point in the theory that some people may think is a little far-fetched. I remember this, so we're gonna just... This is where they say one of the final shots came from.
The officer is looking. He is looking down into the storm drain, because that is where that shot at a stationary car came from. The shot which all of the well-known assassination witnesses described as coming from behind the picket fence missed completely and ripped up the grass at Jean Hill's feet. She did not even notice, but we know this is true because the FBI told her so. So who were the men who fired unseen from the storm drains on Elm Street? One thing we know is that they were very young and had to be brought into the conspiracy because they had to crawl into a filthy, smelly sewer, something which the older, experienced mafia assassins would never have dreamed of doing. They were basically 2 kids, looking for excitement. The first was Curtis Laverne Crayford, also known as Larry Crayford. Formerly CIA, he had worked for Ruby at the Carousel Club, and Ruby had told everyone his name was Lee Harvey Oswald until Lee Harvey Oswald walked in. But while above ground, the world was taking pictures and running and screaming and trying to figure out what had happened. The other young man was stumbling along 400 yards of a reeking, fetid Dallas sewer pipe to emerge from this culvert. And he was not Lee Harvey Oswald, or Roscoe White, or J.D. Tippit, nor even a Cuban or Russian communist. His name was Jack Allen Lawrence. And we know that after stumbling up this bank, he turned up 15 minutes later at the Lincoln Mercury car showroom, where he'd obtained a job with false references, pale, sweating, and, on a hot sunny day in Dallas, covered in mud. Telling his co-workers, Albert Bogard and Robert Tater, he had been ill that morning, he stumbled into the men's room and threw up while they, feeling his behaviour was suspicious, called the police who made a record of the entire incident.
So that is a multi-person shooting theory that some people, don't buy, or that's okay. Just a fun little theory. Now, we did 90 minutes of a first stream that kind of led us up there. That stream is now lost forever. Oh well, shit happens. Welcome to anybody that did not see the first stream. Welcome to anybody that came back. Thank you for showing back up. I think a donation came in at the end of last stream, so I want to make sure that I do read that. I don't want to short anybody here. I will play one more thing to do with the JFK thing, and it's a video from Matt of Quantum of Conscience, and we will also get into RFK a little bit. And if we have any more issues tonight as far as copyright issues where they take us down or just anything, then that'll kind of be it for tonight. And we'll make up for it another time. But if they're going to copyright me twice in one night, then I might have some issues to deal with on the channel. So shout out to Adam Courier for the $20 donation through PayPal. I really appreciate that. Erie Fairy says, Davey is always so chill. Yeah, I mean, what can you do at this point? I mean, again, we're going to be moving over to dLive at some point but the growth has been so crazy on my second channel over the last month to just move away from that. I got to kind of ride it till the wheels fall off. I mean, we've gained 1,000 subs. We're up to about 3 to 350 live every night until they rip us off the sub feed. I mean, we have to go with that growth. If anybody else wants to support the channel, links are in the chat. Nothing's obligated. Always appreciated. Like I said, I'll play one more video to do with the JFK assassination, and then maybe we can move on to a little bit about RFK. And the video I'm going to play has kind of nothing to do with kind of has to do with the assassination itself, but if you guys know Matt from QOC, Quantum of Conscience, he's always taking a different angle about things, and this is called JFK's Bloody Limo, I believe. JFK's Bloody Limo used by 3 other presidents. And then there's also the JFK Abraham Lincoln connections that are always made. Those are obviously very odd too. How, you guys know these connections where it's like JFK had a secretary named Lincoln and Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy, and there's like 30 of these synchronicities between them, like way beyond anything that could be real. So let's see here. And I always like his work. I'm a big fan of his work. I don't agree with, some of the stuff, but I like his work.
Hey guys, it's Matt. Just wanted to show you some pictures before I do the chapter reading. I'm about to read chapter 10-B. So I broke 10 up into 2 sections, if not 3, but I think the next one will be 11. Related to the title here, why JFK's limousine stayed in service for 13 years after Dallas. Now, that's shocking to most people that hear that for the first time. Yeah, they just continue to use it. He's got his head blown off. No problem. Just keep using it for LBJ, for Nixon, and for Ford. Now, just want to show you a couple pictures as we go forward. This will help in the chapter reading. For the purposes of this chapter, or where we are in the presentation of the book, we're sticking with the official story right now on what happened or did not happen to Kennedy. This video is about the limo. Okay, so we're sticking to the official story regarding Kennedy. Okay, all right, we agree. Oh, here's LBJ pictured in the back of the SS-100-X with his Medusa wife. Don't look directly into her eyes. Just sitting in the back of the car where JFK got his head blown off. Yeah, makes perfect sense. The president would just ride around it, and they would just keep using it. That's the chapter presentation. I will get into the details in a moment. By the way, just because there's a picture of these two in the car doesn't mean they used it. I don't care what history tells us. I don't care what the script tries to force feed us. So what if there's a picture of those two? Great, they posed for a picture. Doesn't necessarily mean they used it, but that's what history tells us. However, we do have a picture of Bobby Kennedy and LBJ and Bobby Kennedy's wife. This supposedly is in the SS-100X. Yeah, no problem. Bobby Kennedy's going to ride around in the car where his brother got his head blown off. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. This is, I guess just moments before in Dallas. You can't really see too much of the car there. I wanted to mention this briefly. I do not mention this in the chapter reading. Very interesting here what Quentin Tarantino in Pulp Fiction showed us, where that kid is accidentally blown away, his head's blown off in the back seat of the car, and John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson are caked in blood. They're just covered in blood. The pieces are in his hair. It's just, look at John Travolta if you can see it. I know it's small. It was this Quentin Tarantino, in a way, telling us or showing us what really happens when somebody gets their head blown off in a back seat and how messy it really is or really can be. But we have...
Yeah. So the first stream was blocked in China, the Holy See, Vatican City, Italy, Malta, and San Marino. The Holy See, Vatican City. That's a weird one. No popes watching us tonight. Someone says, oh shit, 187. Yeah, we were at about 350 when they dropped us out of the last one. So, yeah, shit happens, man.
Jackie, if you look at this picture closely, if you blow it up, there's like 2 tiny little spots of blood on her famous pink jacket standing next to Johnson as he's being sworn in. And off right behind his right arm there is, again, the Medusa wife. But, Jackie, weren't you sitting next to somebody that got their head blown off? Yeah, that's kind of what probably happens, and maybe that's what Quentin Tarantino, even in this scene, was showing us, directly or indirectly. Who knows? It's kind of the way things work, in my opinion. So I guess that's about it. The chapter reading is to come. It is for the Quantum of Conscience channel only. You'd say, you want me to get into that? That's where James, and supposedly used by President Johnson, President Nixon, and President Ford. History tells us it was used for 13 years and 50,000 miles after Dallas. Amazingly, right now there's somebody saying to me, so what's the big deal? What are they going to do with it? Throw it out? Well, think about if you were LBJ coming out of the White House about 5 months after Dealey Plaza, and there's a car waiting for you out front, ready to take you and your wife to the theater, for example. You'd say, you want me to get into that? That's where JFK had his goddamn head blown off. Well, yes, sir. It's been reupholstered with all new leather. Well, the carpet's the same, but they found there was no blood in the carpet, so we just kept it. Take a similar example. Do you think any president ever sat in Lincoln's box in the Ford Theater? They demolished an elementary school after Sandy Hook, but they can't scrap the car a U.S. president got his head blown off in?
So if you guys know anything about Matt from Quantum of Conscience, he's always looking for things that show you that this reality isn't what it seems to be, or I think he thinks we live in a regenerating reality of some sort. I don't know his exact theory on things, but he just points things out that kind of, don't make sense sometimes, like how JFK's wife was still covered in blood but wanted to not change. They didn't change her into other clothes for multiple hours. How they would keep getting in the same limo, which doesn't make sense because it would obviously go to some museum, or it just wouldn't be used. They would just get a new one. This is the President of the United States, especially with all the rumors of them saying that Lyndon B. Johnson was involved to up his career. He's not going to use the same fucking car. It just doesn't make sense. But I just wanted to add that in because I enjoy Matt from Quantum of Conscience videos, and I wanted to give him some props there. I think what we can do is move on to a little bit about Robert F. Kennedy, and we'll see how far we get into this until they shut us down. And when they shut us down, that will be it for the night. I do appreciate the good numbers we're seeing here tonight. I had about 350 in the chat until we were shut down. Already back to 200. So I appreciate everyone being here. All my loyal peeps. Anybody new here, welcome. Subscribe if you like it. If not, don't. So we're going to start off with a documentary, Sirhan, the alleged shooter, pictured here, of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And we will give you first the official story of what they told us happened, and then the documentary will be from, I have one from an old Unsolved Mysteries, which I'm going to be very careful with. I have my own work that I've done on it. I have one from the Corbett Report. So we got a lot of different things to go into as long as we stay on course here. So let's look at what they tell us. Let's get the date. Let's get what the official story is. The assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, right? So it says, if you don't like it, fuck off. Well, just if you don't like it, you don't like it. I can handle that. We're all adults here. On June 5th, 1968, presidential candidate RFK was mortally wounded shortly after midnight at the Ambassador Hotel in L.A. Earlier that evening, the 42-year-old junior senator from New York was declared the winner in the South Dakota and California presidential primaries in the 1968 election. He was pronounced dead at 1:44 a.m. You got the famous picture of him on the ground with the worker of the place standing over him. I mean, this is a famous picture. And then the famous picture of Sirhan being led out. I believe mind control operative Sirhan, who also I don't believe actually took the shot. I actually think someone else took the shot. I think he took a shot and missed. And I think someone else took the shot and hit, and Sirhan was blamed for it. That's my reading on the research I've done.
You're going to ask?
So let me start off with this Corbett documentary. Kind of explains where we're at, and I'll do some commentary as we go here.
Of Robert F. Kennedy in 1968.
A reporter for the Mutual Broadcasting System, Andy West, was in the kitchen hallway in the Ambassador Hotel last night when Senator Kennedy was shot. He is perhaps the man who was closest to the senator when the shots were fired. Let's go back now to that hour last night. First, Senator Kennedy in victory, and then the voice of reporter West as our cameras show the panic that gripped the scene.
So I thank all of you who made this possible this evening. All of the effort that you made, and all of the people whose names I haven't mentioned, but who did all of the work at the precinct level, who got out the vote, who did all of the effort, brought forth all of the effort that's required. I was a campaign manager 8 years ago. I know what a difference that kind of an effort and that kind of commitment makes. So I thank all of you, those of you who are here. Mayor Yorty has just sent me a message that we've been here too long already. So my thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
So it happens as he's being, led down off the stage. If you guys have seen this footage before, I saw someone mention Sirhan was seeing a hypnotist. Yes, this was, he was involved in many CIA programs, mind control operation. And I actually had played clips, and there's one in this documentary we'll get to. Can you be hypnotized into shooting somebody? Now, I have to be careful with the clip because that video actually got me pulled down before, and I lost, I couldn't stream for 3 months. So I got to be careful with that clip, but it is possible, according to this one study, to hypnotize somebody into shooting somebody and having no memory of doing it.
turn it on. Okay. Thank you very much. You're the right number. You're the right.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Is that possible? Is that possible? It could. Is it possible, ladies and gentlemen? It is possible. He has not only Senator Kennedy. Oh my God.
Now just imagine this coming off of his brother being assassinated the way he was, and then him, winning the primaries and then being shot right. I mean, it's just, this would be just so shocking to the system. It would be just such a major event. And then people think you get more conspiratorial because of how major the event is, but when you start looking into what happened here, it becomes pretty clear that Sirhan, the guy that they tried to blame for this, was obviously involved in being an asset of one of some of these CIA members. And then you have other people that RFK Jr.'s son to this day thinks was responsible.
Senator Kennedy has been shot, and another man.
The events unfolded right there in plain sight. Everyone saw it. Sirhan with a gun in his hand, shooting at Robert F. Kennedy, and RFK goes down and dies, and Sirhan is restrained. And yes, indeed, he is captured alive, and then he's taken into custody, and the wheels of justice begin turning. And it seems like an open and shut case. What could possibly be problematized about this story? It's nothing at all like the assassination of JFK, is it? So it was that the news organizations began reporting in excruciating detail on exactly how Sirhan killed RFK.
This is a .22 caliber bullet. It's like the one fired point blank at Senator Kennedy from an 8-shot Iver Johnson revolver. A .22 caliber bullet is smaller than an eraser on the end of a pencil. It is smaller than a peanut. The man who fired the gun is Sirhan Bishara Sirhan, a 24-year-old Jordanian born in Jerusalem. He came to the United States 11 years ago. His brother describes him as a nice kid. His mother says he fell from a horse recently, and she has not been able to talk to him since. Los Angeles police say he has not talked about the shooting. ABC's Bill Lawrence examines possible motives.
The seeds of the assassination attempt against Senator Kennedy may be found in his pro-Israeli position, which was re-emphasized and underlined in that joint appearance with Senator McCarthy last Saturday night on the special issue of the special program Issues and Answers. This suggestion found some confirmation today from a pro-Arab spokesman in New York who said that the alleged would-be assassin, Jordanian-born Sirhan, simply reflected, and I quote, the frustration of many Arabs, unquote, with American pro-Israeli politicians.
So this is the narrative they went with, that he was pro-Palestine and he wanted to take out anybody that would have helped with Israeli nuclear deals, and he was just so enraged that he had to kill Robert F. Kennedy. This was the narrative that came out.
At that time, I had held that position approximately 6 years, and it was my duty, really.
So this is a interview with the psychologist of Sirhan, Dr. Edward Simpson Callis.
To examine men on death row, including, of course, Sirhan.
Well, how long was he in prison before you met him?
He had just recently arrived. He had been seen before me shortly by the prison chief psychiatrist, Dr. Smith, who told me about his initial impressions. He was puzzled. He said to me, the picture I see in Sirhan does not match the picture I read in papers. He certainly doesn't seem to me a paranoid schizophrenic, as the psychiatrist testified at the trial, and told me to see Sirhan as often as possible.
So this guy would go on to visit Sirhan. Sirhan have multiple visits with him, and it was his opinion by the end of it that either Sirhan didn't do it or Sirhan really believed that he had no memory of it. He couldn't piece the things together. The narrative that was being painted was thoughts that he wasn't having as far as the pro-Palestine thing. Now, there was some evidence that he, obviously was upset with Robert F. Kennedy about his stance on Palestine, Israel, and Arab relations, but he said he never felt the rage. He didn't want to kill the president or the nominee, as it was. And they just started getting into some of the things that may or may not have happened to Sirhan.
Remote control devices in their brains. The claims relate to a government program at the U.S. Army's Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland, where scientists tested hundreds of chemical and biological substances on at least 7,800 servicemen. So could this really be happening? Well, joining me to help discuss this is Dr. Colin Ross, president of the Colin A. Ross Institute for Psychological Trauma. Dr. Ross, tell me, is this really happening? Did the government really take part in mind control experiments on soldiers? What kind of stories have you heard from the survivors of these experiments? I know you've had access to thousands of documents from the CIA.
Well, it's just like you just said, there's two kind of streams of information. There's stories from survivors, and then there's the documents. So if I go to the documents first, they're very, very detailed, 15,000 pages plus. And we're starting back in 1950 with projects called Artichoke and Bluebird, which were then rolled over into MK Ultra.
And we are very familiar with MK Ultra and the tactics they can use. Now, the tactics used in Sirhan were hypnotizing him. We're going to go over a couple more details before we get to it, but they play a clip here. Let me find this. And this is a short clip because I can't play the full one of how they would be able to hypnotize someone into shooting someone. And I am breaking this down shorter than I was gonna because we got cut off, but the original clip I played before got me shut down, so I want to use this compressed one.
To try and program him into becoming an assassin. As far as they're all concerned, he's simply taking part in a show that explores the limits of hypnotism. We talked to the people closest to him and slipped in some questions about violence.
He's a very peace-loving person, so I can't imagine him being violent in any sort of way.
I don't think Chris would do anything bad to anybody.
Now, since this is a shorter clip, you're going to miss a couple key points that they actually did do in this, and that was they really walk him through over a period of weeks, getting him ready to shoot somebody that he does not know and that he obviously would never shoot. And they do this by passing certain patterns in front of him, giving him certain key phrases that will be a trigger for him. A bunch of different techniques they use to eventually get him to do this.
Ultimately, I don't think he'd hurt a fly.
Interestingly, this is what the younger brother of Bobby Kennedy's killer, Sirhan, says about the convicted assassin's character prior to the murder.
If we were sitting here and a fly happened to venture in, Sirhan would open the door, and he'd try to make it go out again. It's just not conceivable to me that he would take a gun and actually use it against the person.
Now, there is also the lawyer for Sirhan, and we're also going to get into other shooters that were there. But the assassin's lawyer says Sirhan was brainwashed. This was in 2011. A lawyer said the confessed assassin of RFK plans to present new evidence at a parole board hearing suggesting that he did not act alone, was potentially brainwashed, and cannot remember anything about the 43-year-old shooting. There is no question he was hypno-programmed, lawyer William F. Pepper told ABC News. He was set up, he was used, he was manipulated.
In order to condition Chris to become an assassin, I'll be using brainwashing techniques allegedly employed by the CIA's MK Ultra program in the 1960s. There are two key stages to this process: the marksman mode and spontaneous amnesia. Eyewitness accounts report that Robert Kennedy's assassin, Sirhan, was in a trance-like state during the shooting. Under hypnosis, the convicted killer has since said that he thought he was firing at a target in a rifle range and not at a human being. He claims a mystery woman in a polka dot dress pinched him on the shoulder to send him into this range or marksman mode. I'm going to try to create a similar mode for Chris, which will come into play if and when he attempts to assassinate his celebrity target.
Now I'm going to pause a little bit to try to get some fair use out of this because last time it did not end well for the whole channel. I forgot what channel that was. One of my many, but they took it down. This was on a show called Darren Brown, The Experiments. And like I said, he does do this over a series of weeks. And I think Corbett kind of manipulated the footage and shortened it and took some stuff out so he would be able to use it without it getting pulled down here.
Well, you're going to ask, did it work? Well, of course it did, I'll respond. It's TV.
Anything strange happened during the talk?
No.
I'm going to show you some footage of something that did happen. We actually had a camera on you. I know we didn't let you know that we were filming, which was important. Do you remember that woman in the polka dot dress?
No.
Don't remember her turning around talking to you?
No.
Remember that bit?
No.
Yes, at the moment you will have no memory of this at all, but you just assassinated a national treasure.
Yeah, you shot me.
Okay, so look, you know when you have a dream and you have no memory of it, and then somebody says something that just kind of triggers it, and then bit by bit it just starts to come back. And if you do think about it now, just start to think that for me. It's just like a mental block that you have there at the moment. And you can just start to let that go, and you can start to let it... What's coming back to you?
I remember the polka dot woman coming in there. And yeah, just kind of picking the gun up from the side like I was told.
Where did you think you were?
Nowhere, but if anywhere, it's closest to the range because I could visualise the lights going down and the target. And picking it up felt like I was picking it off that bench.
Did you feel anything when you were aiming a loaded gun at Stephen?
Not really. No.
So what they had done is they put him through this marksman training where they would only have him focus in simply on one target, and then they would slowly implement other things like the lady in the polka dot dress. So she would be there every time, and she would say a key word to him every single time. He would see the pattern of the dress. She would say a certain thing. This would eventually trigger him to go into this marksman mode where they had already trained him. He was going to be shooting this specific target. And that's something similar they think happened with Sirhan. And some of the other stuff that, sheds doubt on the official story is them thinking other shooters were involved. Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. himself claims to know who really killed his father and is out to prove it. He says he has compelling evidence and it exists that his father was killed by a former CIA operative, not Sirhan. So, son of the assassinated younger brother of John F. Kennedy, who served as U.S. Attorney General and New York Senator, has claimed compelling evidence exists that his father was killed by former Lockheed aircraft employee and alleged former CIA operative Thane Eugene Caesar. The assassination of the progressive presidential candidate, often referred to as simply RFK, who marched with both Martin Luther King Jr. and farm worker leader Cesar Chavez, and was expected to continue his older brother's legacy, was a key moment in the 20th century history of the United States. Now, the accusation was actually published on Kennedy's official Instagram account, and it's just the latest in the confirmation that the late politician's family remains doubtful over the official explanation of RFK's assassin, that it was actually Palestinian refugee Sirhan. Caesar, who died last Wednesday at the age of 77 in the Philippines, had long been tied to the assassination of RFK by historians. Let me see here. Robert Jr. met with Sirhan in prison a year ago to speak with the man convicted of assassinating his father. Others have also claimed that Sirhan, who was captured on the scene 41 years ago and subsequently said he had no memory of that fateful night, was either an unwitting pawn in the conspiracy to murder RFK or didn't act alone. Others claim that he was hypnotized patsy and a victim of a setup. And I think they have the actual tweet here. Now, Thane Eugene Caesar would have been a security guard working that night. You can see him in many pictures that night, directly behind RFK. And this is the official post from RFK. Thane Eugene Caesar died today in the Philippines. Compelling evidence suggests that Caesar murdered my father. On June 5th, 1968, Caesar, an employee in a classified section of Lockheed Martin, was moonlighting as a security guard at the Ambassador Hotel. He had landed the job about 1 week earlier. Caesar waited in the pantry as my father spoke in the ballroom, then grabbed my father by the elbow and guided him towards Sirhan. With 77 people in the pantry, every eyewitness said Sirhan was always in front of my father at a 3 to 6 foot distance. Sirhan fired 2 shots toward my father before he was tackled. From under the dog pile, Sirhan emptied his 8-chamber revolver, firing 6 more shots in the opposite direction, 5 of them striking bystanders and 1 going wild. By his own account, Caesar was directly behind my dad, holding his right elbow with his gun drawn. When my dad fell backwards on top of him, Caesar reportedly changed his story about exactly when he drew his weapon. According to the coroner, all 4 shots that struck my father were contact shots fired from behind my father, with the barrel touching or nearly touching his body. So this would not be with the official story of Sirhan firing 6 feet in front of him. It would be directly behind him, like the security guard that had his weapon drawn. So that's the other working theory on this case. Let me see if I want to share anything else about RFK before we get out of here tonight. I'm kind of upset that the first one got cut off there because I kind of had a good transition to go. We're about 2 hours and 15 minutes, but I think I got something else from this case. Let me see here. Oh, this is a fun little part to the story. This is a guy named Scott Enyart. Let me see if I can find it. A lot of these things are taken down.
From behind Robert Kennedy. So what that would have shown, the interesting part about that would have been, you would have seen, if there were a second gun, you would have seen the position of everyone. Most important, you would have seen the position of Robert F. Kennedy when the shooting took place.
Scott Enyart was a 15-year-old amateur photographer and Kennedy supporter. Within minutes of the assassination, the LAPD went to extraordinary lengths to get hold of his film.
Yeah, so this kid was like they said, 15 years old at the time, and he's just allowed in as some kind of, school kid that gets to snap photos. He's just loving it, and he takes all these photos. He's right there on top of the assassination. There's a famous photo, and I'll try to pull it up in a second, where you can literally see him pointing the camera down on the body. He's right there. And then the FBI comes and they want all of his cameras. They want everything he has on him. I'm gonna try to pull this picture up. So that they take everything from him, and he never gets all the images back. He never gets all the negatives back. It's this is how they do business. So he's been on shows like Unsolved Mysteries and some other things, and I'm gonna try to. So here's the picture of him, and he will be the guy. Let me try to just pull up the image here. He's the main guy with the camera here, as you can see. So on June 5th, 1968, 15-year-old photographer Scott Enyart was at the Ambassador Hotel taking pictures for his high school newspaper when Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated. Enyart claims that he took a total of 3 rolls of film. The first depicted the stage before Kennedy started his speech. He loaded the second roll as the speech begun. After the speech concluded, he and several other people followed Kennedy from the stage into the pantry as he shook hands with the staff. He claims to have had a clear view of Kennedy as the shooting took place. He also claims that he jumped onto a table and took more pictures as the alleged shooter, Sirhan Sirhan, was apprehended. A few minutes later, Enyart returned to the ballroom where pandemonium had broken out. At that time, he says he loaded and clicked off his third roll of film. He claims that later, during the night of the shooting, police officers chased him down and confiscated the camera, rolls of film, and the negatives, presumably in order to use the photos as evidence, of course. At around 3 a.m., Enyart was brought in for questioning, which lasted about 20 minutes. After Sirhan's conviction, the LAPD told Scott that they had his photographs. They told him that his photographs, along with all other evidence and documents, would be sealed for 20 years. In 1988, Enyart, now an established photographer, wrote to the LAPD asking for the return of the photos. 5 months later, he received a letter from the California State Archives which stated that his photographs could not be found. It concluded that his photographs were destroyed by the LAPD in August of 1968. Enyart then filed a lawsuit against the police. Police later found a sheet of negatives that they believed were his. A few weeks later, city attorneys presented him with a proof sheet made from the negatives. He was suspicious because it only showed 1 roll of film. It was also a Ilford ASA, even though he claimed that he shot the 3 rolls on a Kodak camera. He believes that the police combined his second and third rolls and used the combination as the proof sheet. However, the police claim that the sheet is an entire roll of film. They also do not believe that he was even in the pantry at the time, even though they chased him down, took his camera, and questioned him for 20 minutes, and put it on official record that he was there. A book was released which contained several previously unpublished photographs. Enyart found a photograph of several people in the pantry shortly after the shooting. That's the photo that proves he was there. Enyart continued to press his case against the LAPD. In January of 1996, the city's attorney's office hired a private courier to transfer the negatives from the archives in San Francisco to Los Angeles. After arriving in Los Angeles, the courier rented a car to drive to the courthouse. Along the way there, he got a flat tire that was apparently slashed by a knife. He then pulled into a service station. Within the next 10 minutes, the briefcase containing the negatives was stolen. Many believe that Scott Enyart's photographs hold maybe a key to the controversy over who really shot Robert F. Kennedy, but as of now, they will never be found because they are missing forever. It's just a crazy little story behind some photographs and maybe some actual evidence into this case. Maybe a photograph of, actually you could lay out who actually did the shooting. Not that they would ever reopen the investigation and tell us anything, but again, it's fun. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up there. That's about another hour. We did about an hour and a half on the first one. Hopefully that, like I said, that stream was blocked in some countries, but I think it's still up for you guys, so you can kind of watch the first one and then kind of roll into this one. Yeah, no such thing as conspiracies. Now, there is a actual unsolved mysteries of the thing to do with the photographs. I'll give you guys the link to that if you want to watch it, but to play it on here, I'm just going to risk getting taken down. If anybody else has anything they want to add or anything they want to ask, you can throw it in the chat. If anybody has to reach out to me, you can do so through Twitter or Discord. Those links are in the description. And if anybody wants to help out the channel or donate to myself and the work that we do, links are in the chat. I appreciate everybody coming out. We had about 350 people here before we went down, and we got it back up to 200 here. So, I mean, this is it's a pretty good night. I'm really happy with the numbers we're doing here, and I'm super happy with the numbers we're doing over on the main channel. Everything's growing. Everything's doing really well, and a lot of people are reaching out saying they appreciate the work. So thank you guys for everything. We'll be back on Davey Crocko 2 tomorrow with a main channel stream, and we'll get back into the doom and gloom. I got a couple comedic streams this week to break it up, though, because shit's getting a little too serious out here. We need to have some laughs during the week. yeah, appreciate you guys coming out. Sorry about them blocking it on copyright issues on the first one. I apologize that happened. I'll try to not use certain JFK footage. You would figure you could use any JFK footage at this point, but I guess not. Let me check if there's any donations that I missed. I don't think there is. I think we're good. Okay, guys. Appreciate you guys coming out. And as always, I will see you in the next one.